Bonjour à tous, nous sommes toujours à Rio de Janeiro, au sommet du G20, en cette deuxième journée. Et nous avons la chance d'être aujourd'hui avec Alicia May, qui est de l'université de Sheffield, en Grande-Bretagne, et qui représente ici la revue, la très célèbre revue Global Policy, qui s'intéresse en particulier aux questions internationales et qui est liée à l'université de Durham. Et qui donc, on va l'interroger sur qu'est-ce qu'elle retire, qu'est-ce que retire Global Policy de ce G20. So, I make it a short introduction in French. What's your take on this G20 that is slowly ending?
I would say that it's been pretty successful. Brazil successfully managed to launch its global alliance. 83 countries have signed on to it to agree to it. It's just a shame that obviously the missiles happened in Ukraine yesterday, so the media sort of overshadowed the success of this potential global alliance. Again, I also think it's been a success with the tax the rich policy. For the first time ever in G20 history, this has been brought to light and been mentioned, which is really impressive and a step forward in the right direction to fostering inclusivity and more equality in the world. So overall, I think it's been a success. I think what's really important is that the leaders need to use the discussions to mobilise proper action to obviously get the results of reducing inequality.
So for you first, it's a big success. For Lula, for Brazil?
Yes, very big success.
So you spoke about this global alliance?
Yes.
So this G20 is very specific because there was a social G20?
Yes.
1 week prior to this G20?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that we had, as you said, 83 countries. So it's G83. It's not G20. Yeah.
Yes.
It's urgent because many countries are coming here.
Yeah.
So it's the global alliance and a success, even though countries like Argentina, maybe United States.
Huge different ideological backgrounds, sadly. But I think this global alliance shows that the importance of a multilateral approach with countries connecting together, because that is what's needed, like joint collaboration of all the countries to successfully, obviously, overcome back this issue. But I think overall Brazil should be very proud of itself. It's done well. It's been successful this past year with the presidency. Bolsa Familia has been very successful.
So is it not a little bit like BRICS are getting in this G20 with these 83 countries and proposing this global alliance?
Do you mean BRICS?
Yeah, BRICS, yeah. Sorry for the French accent.
No, not to worry. I mean, I think that the BRICS obviously is getting in, it's getting recognition it needs, but I think it shows as well that the G20 has to expand now. There's a lot of developing countries that have, shown that they can be like big economic representatives and be part of it. For example, Spain needs to be in the G20. But I do think, it is a positive step, and it just shows that the G20 needs to foster more representation of the world. So,
But, as you said, this G20 was overshadowed by the situation in Ukraine and the authorization given by the White House to launch long-range missiles into Russia. Was it done on purpose to overshadow this G20? Because if I understand well, this morning the Brazilian presidency was not very happy with the decision of the United States and the decision of Russia to change its policy regarding nuclear response.
I think we've also seen over the few years that Russia has been very smart and tactical in its attacks. Obviously, Russia is part of the G20. Putin is not allowed to obviously come for obvious reasons.
Well, Lavrov was here.
Who was?
Sergei Lavrov was here.
But obviously Putin not. Yeah. But I think it was done on purpose to show. I think it was just very tactical to get a response from the West, to show that you guys are all together here, we're going to still be attacking. And I think it was a very powerful show from Russia, very tactical, very thought out. And I think, my opinion, the US, I don't think it should have been done during the G20. I think it's just overshadowed all the successes that have come a long way, that people work hard to collaborate for, and instead it's just showing what the G20 doesn't foster: war crimes. It's not fair. Ukrainian, people that have not done anything bad are getting punished for it. But the G20 should be looking at highlighting the successes. So I do think it was bad, just from USA to provide Ukraine with the missiles to do it today. because it's just overshadowed everything.
Plus, during this night between Monday and the Ukrainian, because they get the authorization, so they fired on Russia. So it was. Well, when we see the French media, it's like G20 doesn't exist at all.
It doesn't exist at all, no. It doesn't, because like I think the G20 as well, like a lot of the presidents, prime ministers all have different ideological backgrounds, different approaches. A lot are more multilateral, some are more bilateral. So there does be a lot of clashes. We saw it yesterday. Argentina was not happy with the decisions made. The statement it released on Twitter, showed a lot. So I think the G20 does highlight that it can be difficult to, make these concrete cooperative decisions because, the ideological backgrounds of these leaders inevitably clashes. So it just again shows with Russia how that was done.
You said also that the other success was let's tax billionaires.
Yes.
Which is something that's proposed for many, many years. It's maybe linked a little bit to the Tobin tax.
Yeah.
But now they agreed on something.
Yes, they're agreeing, and I think.
Do you think they will be able to apply it concretely?
I think there's hope. I think with Trump getting in, it's a worry. Trump's against that. He's a bilateral man. He's not going to want to incorporate that. But I think there is hope. I think that there's, with South Africa taking over the G20 presidency, they obviously want to try and, reduce social inequality. We saw South Africa in their statement yesterday. And the only way this can be done is by generating more money. Where you're going to get the money from? Where you get it from the richest. So I think a lot of countries are starting to see that policies can be made from all the money if it's done correctly. I think that if this does get through, that there's going to have to be a lot of strategy thinking, because obviously it can go epically wrong with all this money. But I think potentially that this is the highest of the hopes the G20 has had in a big policy like this that can generate lots of money to reduce inequality. So I think, potentially yes, hope so.
And from global policy point of view, maybe there is a problem with the globalization, how it is, because it allows very, very rich people, billionaires, to go around taxation while having companies, banking accounts in many different countries. And it's even not only hard to tax them, but it's even hard to know how much money they have.
Well, I think, again, it needs to be something like the Global Alliance, where not just the G20 is agreeing to it, it needs to be all the main economies agreeing to this, so that these rich people do not avoid paying this tax. They've got to pay it, it's got to help the world. A lot of the world is suffering, as we all know, and I think that it's got to be an agreement that everyone agrees to. It's got to be a concrete decision. This is when the G20 can use its platform effectively to tackle inequality, if it's done right. Because if not, the rich people are going to use tax loopholes, avoid paying tax, move to other countries. But if it's a global concrete decision, then they can't do that. So so I think if the right things are done, it can be very successful. But it's got to have a lot of thinking, and it needs to mobilise. It can't just be said. Like a lot of the time, the G20 just advocates stuff. Oh, we want this, we want this. It needs to now use its platform to get things moving, get everything on the go.
That was what President Lula emphasized this morning.
Yes.
He said, okay, it's nice to have these decisions. He was a bit pretty much
we need to
punchy.
Get
He said, okay, it's also the COP29, but a lot of good resolutions, but how we control it's really done. And it's also, he was also asking here for a change in the global governance and more space for a country from the global south in the international institutions. So what's your take on this? You think it's possible to have a control on nice decisions, but how to implement them?
I think it's good. We're starting to see more recognition of the global south. Next year it's going to South Africa. Last year India hosted it. We're starting to see that big recognition that we need to start including the global south in the economy. But I think these nice decisions, again, like Lula, it needs to have all the governments supporting it, backing it. It's got to have the concrete decisions for it to be able to stabilise and mobilise. So if you just don't mind repeating what you're trying to say, could you just repeat what you said?
Sorry?
Could you just repeat the question?
Repeat?
Yeah, repeat the question.
Sorry.
I think.
I was wondering if how it's possible to implement the control Lula is asking for.
It's only possible with all the leaders coming together fostering that concrete decision. It's not possible with some saying yes, some saying no. It's got to be a concrete, unified decision. If not, it's not going to be successful. It's not. The tax the rich will not happen. The rich will move to other countries, put their money in elsewhere to avoid paying it. Loopholes will exist, and that money is needed at the end of the day to address
Like, for example, we have this problem in Europe, in
Yes.
EU, because we have
do.
Ireland and Luxembourg, and it's different way to organize taxation, and it's more organized to give the possibility to people to avoid taxation than to be taxed.
Exactly, and it's a big problem. It's not just a problem in the G20, it's a problem everywhere. In America, Brazil, I mean, it's made improvements. Again, it's not fair.
French, British Islands,
disproportionate, everywhere disproportionate, and I think this is a real problem. Like, I know that in Brazil, you know, the taxation system is not, it's made improvements. It's still got a long way to go. It is benefiting the rich white class supremacy. It needs to be able to, you know, foster in that people's wealth and do it based on brackets. And at the end of the day, like, it feels like almost billionaires are sort of ruling the world a little bit. You know, they're freelancing, they can avoid paying, they've got all the money in the world. 2% is not much. You know, there's an argument. So I read an argument today.
Nothing. It's
nothing. I think Oxfam, so I was talking below to them, they think it's going to have to be 8% for noticeable changes to be made. 8% of all the 3,000 families. I think 2% is a positive direction, and it will start, but realistically, it should be more. It should be a lot more from billionaires.
Well, at least it's on the good tracks.
It's on the good tracks. It just needs, as we've said, it needs that concrete solidification of all the leaders to mobilise, and it needs to be, a lot of the time, these big, you know, political forums are just, you know, like, come together, a big show almost, you know.
And also on climate issues.
Yes,
it was emphasized this morning by Lula.
Yeah, we need, Lula obviously has really strongly advocated, because climate issues is also, again, disproportionately affecting, you know, the inequality of everything. The global south is going to be really effective, infrastructure. So but I think we're in the positive direction. This G20, I think, overall has had some success, apart from the organisation of this.
It was fun. It was very nice. Maybe I have a last question, because we had a clash here yesterday between Great Britain and China, with the Prime Minister Keir Starmer patronizing China for the non-respect of human rights, and the Chinese were really upset right away.
Yes.
So what do you think about it? Why they did that, knowing that there will be a clash?
I think obviously it was a really significant moment yesterday. In 6 years was the first time a British Prime Minister met the Chinese President. You know, it's a big significant moment.
Oh really? It's the first time in 6 years?
Okay,
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So it's a really big moment. I think, to be honest with you, I think it shouldn't have happened like that at the G20. Again, mitigated attention from everything. And obviously Keir was just trying to protect, you know, the human rights in Hong Kong and stuff. So obviously China slowly is going to take over Hong Kong, as we all know. But again, I don't think it was an effective conversation to have at the G20 summit. I think conversations like that steers away what the G20 actually is. The G20 is obviously trying to collaborate, you know, mitigate inequality. But I do think it was a very significant moment for people in Britain as well, because two world, you know, leading economies meeting for the first time in 6 years, with tension, you know, from the US and everything. It was a massive, massive moment for many British people watching. So
How do you see the reaction of the global south? Because I've seen this morning the reaction of the director of the Tricontinental, Mr. Prashad, which is Indian, and he said, no, it's not your concern, Hong Kong. You consider it's your concern because you invaded it in the 19th century, making two wars because you were drug dealers, which is very harsh against Britain. And in Kazan, we've been in the Kazan summit, the BRICS summit, and everybody was saying that from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, stop patronizing us, it's a bit like they are not hearing that in,
do you mean
in
England's
the West.
not the US?
Well, not all the Western countries, former colonies. You don't have the right anymore, because anyway you did also your wars, your colonies, and there is a massacre ongoing in Gaza, and you're saying nothing. So please.
My opinion on that would be that I think these global, it's true, like, it's the G20 now, it's not just the Western taking over the world, it's gotten so much more, and it's right. And I think the patronisation, I see where it's coming from, like, I get it. It's just like a really difficult. I think the leaders, a lot of the time, very sensitive. I think USA is a big, not threat, but people, don't want to go against the belief, especially for people like England and stuff, big ally. So people like Osama, when it comes to the Gaza conflict, people are silenced because they don't know what to say. They know what's correct, but they don't feel the need to voice it. I think it's just a bit of a sad thing because I do think though the Western powers are slowly losing their power and the influence they have in the world. It's slowly getting overtaken. India's coming up, China always been there, and I think the USA slowly over the time will end up losing its influence and power. And I think the whole world knows that. The USA knows that, and that's why they've panicked, and got Trump in. But yeah, it's just it's a really interesting time because England right now is, since leaving Brexit, is struggling. Anyone knows. Teachers are on strike, the NHS is in crisis, the economy is worse.
Well, Europe is in recession. So.
It's terrible. And, countries like this, like Brazil, then have the opportunity to emerge up. South Africa, India can take this, leverage up. So it just obviously steers away the power from the West. So yeah, I just think from a policy analyst view, it's a really interesting time watching this all unfold.
So from the point of view of global policy and your point of view, do you consider that we are going toward, or maybe we are already in a multipolar, multilateral world, and that the unilateralism of the 90s is dead already?
I think we are moving to a more multilateral world, not just the West being together now. We're trying to incorporate partnerships with India, for example. South America is starting to, Brazil obviously generated it was on the Times or something, 8th richest GDP in reported, which is obviously remarkable. So I do think we're moving to a multilateral approach, but yes, definitely more towards like fostering global South, not just the superiority of the West. So yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts. It's very, very interesting.
No worries.
And maybe let's meet you in another summit somewhere.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.